running after, yeah, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, friends. Well, it's 11:33. I expect we'll have some more people slide in, which will be wonderful. I'm so glad that you all are here today. And we're going to be hearing from Laura Choi, who is a recent seminary graduate, but not your very This is your first degree, right? You got your master's from Princeton a number of years ago.
Yes, a number of years ago. 2004, graduated with Christian Master of Arts in Christian Education.
Fabulous. Did you guys overlap?
I also graduated in 2004.
I thought you did!
It's true.
We did not overlap very much. Yeah.
Say again?
We didn't overlap very much on campus, though.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So glad we're overlapping now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're delighted to have Laura, who's deeply involved in the work of, what it means to be an affirming church, an affirming denomination, and we're grateful to have you here. So can I open us in prayer?
Of course.
Okay, let's pray, friends. Gracious God, we're so grateful for this time together as we lean into love just a little bit more, as we lean into you and your spirit. May we notice your spirit in our conversation as we hear Laura share all that she has to share with us today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, friends. Thank you for inviting me back. I have a part 2 here because I think it's October 23. I think I was here, did a part 1 series, but I am so grateful that you are, or this congregation is along the journey of learning and understanding and exploring what it means to be an affirming congregation. And I kind of want to preface by saying that, I didn't begin here, right? Like this is part of my journey as well, because over years of learning and earlier on in my faith journey, I really was not close to. I did not have the proximity with the LGBTQ community, so there's a lot that I did not understand. And there's a lot that I accepted as if they are the right Christian responses, right? The right Christian understandings. But over the years, I've had to really deconstruct that and really learn it and research it and investigate it for myself. And also becoming a parent of a queer child. That led me to really exploring what it means to affirm my kid and affirm all people like her, and what that means in faith spaces. So prior to coming, I watched and listened to Audrey's video or the series, my Bible study. It was just several weeks ago or a couple months ago, and I saw that you had talked about God in God's pronouns being misused, and that is much more buried in the original Hebrew. So that's why I wore my shirt today.
The original they, them. Oh, I love it.
Original they, them.
I need that.
So yes, this is it's how I think understanding, taking Hebrew was really transformative for me, because of learning about the words that are used for God in the original Hebrew that varied, that included they, them pronouns, that included, and most of the time it's referred to as, using masculine pronouns, but words like Elohim is plural. It's a plural they, them. And anytime it refers to the Holy Spirit, it's a she, her. So, it's, I just think it's so beautiful, and how, English scripture wasn't translated into English into the 1500s. So, and just understanding the context under which, scripture was translated, and and now our understanding now of in English, so in our context. So, Bibles was not written for Americans in the 21st century. So I think that's always important to remember when we're reading who the writers are writing to, what their contexts are, and how that shapes the faith of that community and what that means for us now today. So just a little introduction. This is us. This is my family. This is the last family picture we took, December 2024. My oldest is Taylor, and she is 22, and she is the one who made me mom and the one who took me on this journey. So my middle daughter is Ella. She is 19. She's a student at Barnard College, and freshman year. My almost 15-year-old, and he's a super typical teenager, which I feel like I'm experiencing for the first time, because I did not, the other two. Hello everyone. I know I used this text the first time I was here, and I saw that Audrey had also used it a couple months ago, and just wanted to keep expanding on this and remind us why we're here, right? Why we're exploring this text. Can someone read that? Would someone like to read that?
Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 26-27. Then God said, "Let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humans in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them.
I think oftentimes, this is a passage that, advocates like us, we use to affirm all people in the congregation, but I have also heard folks use it to affirm their exclusion of queer folks in the faith community, right? So both scriptures that affirm can also be used as weapons. So just keep in mind the context of how passages of scripture is used to affirm another human or to tear them down. So
How can it be a weapon?
how
Is
can
that what
it
you
be a
said?
weapon? Just last week, I will get into this, using an example from my township, show you some of the crazy things happening on my township page, right? The social media page, that they keep insisting that God made male and female, period, right? So even my response to that was, well, yeah, God said and, right? God created male and female, not male or female. So challenging their understanding of the binary of genders, right? But they are using this passage to insist that God made Adam and Eve, right? And that's it, the binary. Sorry?
But he did make male and female. And he did make Adam and Eve. And he
Yes.
did make animals that were either male or female. So I don't see where you're saying that this is a...
Maybe give her a chance to continue.
I could, but she's giving examples that I need answers to. So, okay, I'll wait.
Okay, well, both, right? God embodies not embodied, God doesn't have a body, but we are created in reflection of, the image of God, which is both male and female, right? Not male or female. So there are, let me move on, and maybe we'll see some other examples. So I guess over the, okay, I welcome all questions. Please stop me if you have questions or comments. But also want to preface with like the last 6 years I've served on my local school board and in Greenwich Township, and I also sit on several different boards that I'm on the API Rainbow Parents of PFLAG New York City, where we support Asian American families and parents and young people along their journeys, and also on 2 national boards of that advocate for inclusive curriculum, especially Asian American Education Project and the Eat Global Student Project that advocates for a pluralistic education. So I have been sort of engaged in this space for quite a while. There's a lot of overlapping intersectional issues and debates about what deserves space in the curriculum, or what deserves so in education. So that most of my work is in the educational equity space. So and as a Christian educator as well, there are things that I've learned that I've had to unlearn and have to figure out what Scripture is actually speaking to us about, right? So there's a list of. So many of these are kind of known as clobber texts. I know Audrey had mentioned that before. So some of these passages are specifically used to denounce and to exclude queer folks traditionally, historically, in faith spaces. Again, few also cite Genesis 1-2, right? Like the passage that we just read. In Genesis and Leviticus, and I know you've gone over those, so I'm not going to, but these are some of the very specific texts, right, that's used to weaponize against the queer community. Oh, I keep pressing the wrong button. And yet there are I can't even list them, right? There are over 2,000 passages on God's concern for the poor and call for justice, fairness, and compassion on all people, and a collective responsibility to care for the least of these. So those are few texts that's often used to exclude, to cause harm, and we sometimes ignore the overall, the overarching, command to care for the least of these, whoever they are, right? Like whoever they are, regardless of labels. And I think if we can, this kind of summarizes, I know the PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church, often calls us to be a Matthew 25 church. And what does that mean to be a Matthew 25 church, right? So can I have someone read this passage?
Hold on.
Yeah.
So Matthew 25, for I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me.
this is the church's call to care for all people, especially the least of these, because in the other is the image of Christ, right? So this is the challenge. This is a call to every worshiping congregation. That includes the physical care of food, drink, clothing, shelter, right? Physical care of people lacking those necessities. The emotional care of being welcoming, including safety and belonging. Because oftentimes I feel like as Christians, we're very good at wanting to care for someone, care for the other, care for the less fortunate, and kind of hold back on being completely hospitable, elevating the stranger to a guest of honor, as a guest of honor. So not just caring for your needs over there, but welcoming them into the flock, into safety and belonging, that they belong here, and not just we'll take care of you out there and leave you there, right? So the Matthew 25 passage speaks to all of these, right? Like the physical care, the emotional care, and spiritual care. When we're visiting folks who are in bondage, with comfort, with our presence, and embodying Christ to them. So the question becomes, how do we embody Christ to one another here within the walls, outside to others, to the world? But really asking ourselves, how do we embody Christ to the queer community? To someone who's might be visiting and who's might be part of that community and not know like where this church stands is, but it's very visible here around this space. So I would think that someone in the LGBTQ community would find welcome even before they meet anyone, right? Like it's a space that you have created intentionally. So I think that challenges to think about what is currently under attack for the beloved queer community if we commit ourselves to providing safety and welcome and inclusion. If that is something that you want to affirm yourselves as, right? Like if that is a space where you're committing to be, what does that mean? So we must also ask ourselves, how are they under attack? How can we speak directly into the practical spaces where they're being challenged, where their humanity is being challenged? How can followers of Jesus Christ show up to support the physical, emotional, and spiritual care for the queer community? I don't know, any thoughts?
Yeah, why is it just queer? Why isn't it LGBTQIA plus?
Q is part, it's queer. It's just,
I realize that, but she's always said queer.
Using those terms interchangeably.
Okay.
So
Why don't you just call the whole thing?
I think queer is sort of the big umbrella. So then you have one easy to pronounce word instead of the letter.
I'm just trying to understand this. I apologize if I sound negative. I'm not.
That's okay.
I've
That's
said
okay.
a
We're all
lot of-
learning here.
So for me, I think the attack is when and it's, especially for the queer community, but it's for all minorities, is when you start othering them,
Yes.
like us and them, they're the others. And I think the answer for me personally is to try to individualize and see every person as, like Jane or John, and not as, oh, they're in this group, like, trying to avoid putting people in drawers, in boxes, and instead just look at this person in that moment as opposed to immediately trying to sort them into,
But aren't we
categories.
doing that by labeling We're putting,
Yes.
we're putting these people in a box.
You're right. That is
LGBTQ.
I would hope that that is the ultimate goal, right? That we can see one another and relate to one another purely as human beings, right? Like as you deserve to be in this space as much as I do, and vice versa. But
If I could say
but is
something
that,
for just a moment.
I'm not sure if that's a reality.
With
at
the
the
way
moment.
I look at it is to kind of respond to that. Everyone is going to have their own spaces that they take up, whether you are an Asian woman, a white female, a white male, you know, and then subsets of that, you know, someone who is from a certain region, from a certain space. Everyone has those identities that they hold fast that can't be undone, whether it's who you are, who you love, and in a way that you can sort of acknowledge that, but not make that the overarching thing. You know, you look for the safe space, like in the bulletin, there's the little rainbow emblem for Presbyterian Church. Like to me, I look for something that makes me know this is a good space. You know, you say, how can you show up? Everyone wears name tags. Put your pronouns on them. So then if someone, it's a really easy way to say, oh, you know, you don't have to ask, it's right there. So those are thoughts I have at least. But
Thank you, that's a wonderful idea.
I was listening to the radio yesterday, just on my way shopping, and I came into the middle of this interview, so I didn't get the beginning of it, but an actor, young actor was being interviewed, a young man who is gay, and the question asked of him was, did you have to give up anything on your way to where you are now? So he thought, he didn't just jump in, he really, there was a long pause before he answered it. And then he said, you know, I grew up going to church. I went to church every Sunday with my family. I went to Sunday school, I got all the awards, did all of it. And I went to youth camps. And then slowly, I began to realize I was different. And then at about 13, he said he realized that, yes, he was gay. And he said, I didn't feel like I had a place, so I left the church behind. And I thought, that's really what we have to be talking about, isn't it? Is how many young people haven't left various churches because they didn't feel they had a place? And that seems to me to be the question, the place. And not let any more young people just walk away because they didn't have a place there.
Right, so I think that's what I meant when I said, what does it mean when we commit to being explicitly a welcoming and inclusive space? Not just a friendly church, right? Because I think we can find many of those that you know, that would be the church's identity. We're friendly and we're welcoming, but how would someone who has been rejected by the very same community feel welcomed again? Yeah.
As a soon not to be elder.
He's counting the days.
And I thank you, George, for. I do wanna kind of explain how I think we got here, how we had you with us today, Laura, and how we've done some other things. And that was in the president's inaugural address. He was very explicit about the policy of the United States government being that there are only two genders. That's the power of the United States government. Now, I have a person that I love very dearly who is non-binary. That presents that person that I love so much with enormous concerns and complications. That person doesn't live in Morristown any longer, but I have to assume that there are people like them who live around here who may have the desire to have a relationship with God, may already have that relationship. But if they're looking around for for some place with which to share and to learn and to be supported. I would like my church to be a church. I'd like to think that there are others. And I think a lot of what we have very purposefully done since the new administration took power through a democratic election is to try to explore how we can be welcoming, how we can be affirming, realizing that we're all sinners and our job is to welcome everybody made in God's image.
Yeah, and I think the goal is to be where, where you mentioned that where all of our identities can be celebrated, and that, that is, in all its fullness. And I really affirm what you said about, like, we all have, we're all different people here, right? Like, I can only understand my life as an Asian American woman who, as an immigrant, as a parent of a trans kid, but I don't know, I can never live in my kids' shoes, right? Like, I don't know what that's like to be fearful these days, every day, of your own safety. And I don't know what that's like. So all I can do is advocate for them. But yeah, I wish we don't have to categorize folks, but our census categorizes us, a lot of the policies right now specifically target categories of people. So how should a community of faith respond to that while believing that we are all created in the image of God and affirm all of our identities?
I look around this space and I see a lot of people that are roughly my age, more or less.
I'm only 40.
I wasn't speaking directly to you, darling.
I got lots sometimes. I'm sorry. I'm 73.
So my point is, I really enjoyed being subversive in the
We
late
know
60s
that.
and the early 70s. And I commend it. It's very freeing to be subversive and to let God be the judge. I am not. And I teach ESL, and somebody came to me once and, accused me of accepting illegals. And I don't look at anybody and think that they're, well, okay, I'm old, I'm white, I'm privileged, but yeah. I don't look at other people as other. I try not to do that. Sometimes I do, but I try not to do that. But I really enjoy being subversive. So if my government says I have to be one way, I really like saying
No.
and going my own way, and I support this. I would just like some guidance on how to do it, which is, I guess, what we're here to do.
Yeah.
But subversiveness is really fun.
Shenanigans.
Yes, shenanigans. That's it.
Yes.
I was just thinking, you mentioned this person who left the church. Was he rejected? Maybe he wasn't rejected, maybe just nobody was there embracing. And I'm thinking, all the stuff that Daniel talked about this morning, it's taking care of people, feed the hungry, welcome people. And if we don't do any of that, then we're not going to do the welcoming of the LGBTQ community either. It has to be all the way, it has to be everything. And if that young man didn't see a church that tried to take care of the poor and feed the hungry, he would probably not even dare discuss who he was or who he was trying to be. So the whole atmosphere in every way has to be open so that every person feels embraced.
Right. right, it's explicit welcome, right?
Mhm.
Like, what are the signs and what are the things we say? What are, you know, what are the visible things for folks to feel welcomed, rather than just implicitly saying, oh yeah, we're a welcoming church, you know, we're a friendly, loving church.
I think also, one of the things to consider is that, you know, from the outside looking in, Christians are like this mass. You know, like, I don't think that most people that are on the outside necessarily understand how much diversity there is between the different faiths. I want to say Catholic Church and Presbyterian Church are very far apart in many things, even though both of them
Christians.
Yeah, Christians. So I think setting signals that tell people that no, not all Christians are, you know, judging you on this stuff, it is helpful, because I think that, you know, like with what you read and hear is, you know, especially now within the Pope, that there's a whole discussion about all that, where the Catholic Church stands and whatnot. I think it's easy to overlook that that's not necessarily true. That's not true here, because this is not a Catholic church, and, you know, we see these things quite differently.
I'm sorry, there are so many comments. Back there, you
I just want to echo on what Mary was saying. Was this person rejected, or was he not seen, right? And I think that's what we're doing here today, right? There are a lot of signals that say we're welcoming, but we are learning, like you said, like we are learning how, and that way we can like practice what we preach, right? There's another layer of right? You're like, I was just waiting to say that because I'm speaking to a preacher. But you know, it's really important to not just be bait and switch, right? Like, yeah, we're welcoming, great, but we don't want to hear anything about it, or we're going to put it on you to, you know, as a queer person to explain to us, you know, and we need to do the work, right? Like, so I think that's what this is as well. It's like that next layer, that deeper layer of understanding and caring.
Absolutely. Yeah, this, how it applies, like how does it apply to you specifically, Morristown Presbyterian Church, right? Like, in this context, because it would look different than my context in Warren County, right? So.
What my son mentioned, you know, seeing the LGBT flag on the bulletin, I think we have worked to do some of that outer communication, so that if somebody is church shopping and they go,
That's what
go online, and Amanda has done a wonderful job of, you know, putting little buzz things in there so that somebody can say, oh, it's a place I might try. And then it's up to us, we welcome them to the door, do we welcome them to the table? And I think that's where, you know, maybe it is a one-on-one, and you have to make the most of it without, you know, diving on the person.
You want me to use car salesman about it? Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
Do you want to speak?
Well, actually, I might change topics. You had a good thread going here.
Oh,
It was
okay.
kind of getting there. But the comment is that it's generally believed that everybody who's born is either born with, you know, an X and a Y or two Ys, okay? And that's where our gender identity comes from historically. All they knew was male and female when the authors of the Bible wrote this,
Right.
what you're presenting. But it's now pretty well understood that there's a lot of variation in terms of not everybody gets an X and a Y or two X's, okay? It's just nature is running its course. It's like watching Star Wars and looking at some of the bars in there. You know, there's all manner of variation. And I mean, it is a fact that lots of people are born and they don't have either just an X and a Y. So anyway.
I will get to that actually.
You will, okay, great. So
it's
the gender identity in my mind, I'm just speaking for myself now, the gender identity variation is just a byproduct of us producing 8 billion people on this planet and having lots of variation. It's
Just biology.
it's biology. Thank you.
Those variations weren't
Huh?
here. Those variations
Oh,
weren't
they
here
were.
1,000
They
years
existed.
ago.
They've
They
been here,
always
but people have been
existed.
in the closet. That's the way I view it. People have been in the closet and are afraid to come out because they didn't want to get
Well,
whatever.
we'll get a little bit deeper in a little bit, but about that.
Sure,
So
okay.
thank you all for your comments. I love that you're thinking about all this practical stuff. So some of the things that are specifically attacking the rights of the queer community now, which is why we need to explicitly support. So I'm thinking about, like, when we're reading the Gospels, right? Like the people that Jesus interacted with, that Jesus affirmed, were women, were people with leprosy, were the outcasts of the community, right? So those were the labels that defined them, that caused them to be marginalized and outcasted, right? Like they're not welcomed. It didn't have any, I don't know of Jesus interacting with a queer person directly, right? Like explicitly in the Gospels. But perhaps different times we need to ask ourselves, as we are a church, in the world, who are the people that are being marginalized, and who would Jesus be including and excluding and calling into the community at this time? And right now, it is the queer community, it is the immigrants, it is whatever the power power that they are specifically targeting right now. So, and all in the name of Christian nationalism, right? In God's name. And the repealing of policies and rights that risk the safety and access for LGBTQ community, especially of our trans siblings. And I, shared a story before, I think I did, because it was part of the slides from the last time. When my kid first came out to us when she was 14, this was 2017, right after the first Trump election. This, I think, happened right after Easter, around Easter time. And, it kind of came out of left field for us. We knew she was struggling with, so we were kind of seeking support for mental health, for anxiety. There was some school avoidance. There was some, I'm like, what is happening? You were this like happy kid, it kind of came out of left field, right? Like we kind of weren't prepared. And we were questioning, but not exactly sure what it was, because I suspected that she was part of the acronym, the alphabet soup, but I couldn't figure out which letter it was, right? And so, so the first few months, I think, that was April. First few months, I really, and as parents, I can relate to other parents who grieve. The initial shock and the loss of my dreams for her, and loss of like what does this mean for her future, for our future, for what? How do we tell the grandparents? Like all of those things, right? So the first few months, and then in July, Trump tweeted the first tweet as if it was an executive order, a mandate, or whatever, right? Like trans people were no longer allowed to serve in the military. And I heard that on NPR while I was driving on the highway. I literally pulled over and stopped, because I don't have time. My kid doesn't have time for me to get together, for me to understand, because now the world is not safe for her to exist. Because she was 17, no, she was 14. I'm like, well, what if my kid wants to join the military in like 4 years? Well, then she can't, right? Like those are those are reversal and repealing of human rights. So that was our experience. And then, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna keep going. Banning access to books that center queer experience and existence, and the erasure of policies, protections, erasing identities and stories. Now this is not just centered on the queer LGBTQ community, right? Like there's been an active intention to erase history. Right? So erasing the stories of history, and this all played out in a microcosm of, in our little town in Stewartsville, I know, on the school board. There was a woman who was now elected onto the school board not this past election, the year before. Over the pandemic, I think this all really kind of bubbled up over the pandemic because of vaccine mandates, masking mandates, and then parents feeling like they're losing control of their children's, what their children can and cannot do in school, all of that. This woman literally stood up and read from a Christian nationalism pamphlet, right? Like during a public meeting, and said that is, we need to go back to that, right? And the public liked her enough to elect her, right? And how at different points she had mentioned, about slavery being in the past, and we don't need to focus on that anymore, and how like we just need to focus on America being a great nation, right? Like that is who we are, and that is who, anyway. So that is a very intentional like erasure of stories and identities, histories, and access to civil rights and human rights. What happened? So these are some of the, oh wait, is this the next one? Yes. So these are some of the latest headlines as of like this week, right? I don't know if any of you know Aaron in the Morning. Aaron in the Morning. Aaron is a trans woman journalist who follows all the anti-trans policies across the nation. This was yesterday. I mean, again, these are rights being stripped on a legal level, right? Like 9th Circuit Court rules SPA's anti-trans ban is not protected by the First Amendment. California Schools Sports Authority panders to Trump, offers consolation to spots to cisgender girls who identify as girls. And House spending bill banning Medicaid for transition care for adults, not just children anymore, not just minors anymore, right? I wanted to show you a map of her. So this is a really informative map, I think. These are the states that have reversed policies. That's the adult anti-trans legislative risk assessment. This is the one for youth, for young people, maybe in school policies. So all the red and the oranges that you see have reversed policies to protect trans people. If I'm not wrong, I think the EU actually, or maybe certain countries in Europe, have issued travel warnings to the US for the LGBTQ community, right? Like that is how dangerous it is right now. And my kid is living in Texas right now. So, she's happy where she is, and
Austin?
She's outside of Dallas.
Okay, that's
Yeah, her community is still, they're still safe, but it doesn't mean that they won't be, and they are looking to hopefully leave right? We have to make that possible, you know, like, we just encounter different, and they're adults, like, she's with her partner, outside of Dallas, and, while her partner finished school, and now, you know, in Alzheimer research, and we were hoping that they would enter this next stage of their life once, you know, we thought Alzheimer research was safe, but it is also not, because she is having a really hard time finding something that's not been defunded. So they're kind of in limbo again, and you know, I think that's kind of what I want to say. Like folks, the access to rights, to just to live, is so challenging for the trans community. They've had to stop their lives, to reassess, to figure out what's next. That is not as easy as for most of us. Where you can go to school, where you can have access to medication, to affirming care, like all of that, yeah, so.
But is it any different than a 13 or 14-year-old woman getting pregnant and deciding she is gonna have a baby and she's an unwed mother? Her whole life is totally changed. What are people doing for that? I mean, it's, you know, how is she accepted in the world?
How?
Better than it used to be, probably, but, you know, it's...
Well, I don't know, I worry about her options and her choices too, right? Like,
Yeah,
moving
I
forward, like, I don't know.
The question for us is,
Not enough
as a
being
faith
done, for
community,
sure.
how would we respond
Yeah.
to this
Well, your
person
connection just
who's
was
in a difficult
Okay.
position? I think that's our question here today.
But it's
Yeah.
not only how we respond as Christians or church, but it's how does the world respond? You know, how does the world respond when somebody
Well, the world is responding, right? The world is responding by rolling back a lot of the rights, and access to, care and rights. And
let's say on an athletic, you know, well,
okay, we'll get there too, I promise. So, okay, that's not it. Sorry, I'm trying to, there we go. So Erin in the morning, again, she's a trans activist journalist, so this is her space, right? Like this is, so if you want to learn the most updated issues that, you know, legal issues about, for the trans community, this is the best space to learn from. Okay, so so these are, I just highlighted some, the hot button issues, right? So hot button issues regarding trans rights, specifically trans rights, not women's rights. I mean, of course, there's a lot of overlapping issues, but specifically for trans rights here. Bathroom access, right? Transgender, because the argument was transgender identity being equated with pedophilia, right? So this is happening across the school districts in New Jersey right now, because a lot of wasn't sure where to wrap that into here, but it's so there is this policy that protects the trans population, students in school district, called Policy 5756, that has this. It's a policy that all school districts in New Jersey adopted between 2015 to 2019. Okay, between the 4 years, nearly 600 school districts adopted this policy as a guidance from the DOE, from the New Jersey Department of Education, to kind of explain and give guidance to teachers and staff, and you know how to ensure that the students' rights are protected without breaking the law, right? So it's a guidance. So the argument is protect our innocent rights. And I will share with you that last Wednesday, my district tried to repeal it. And the arguments for always went back to that the possibility of a 5th grade biological boy assaulting a kindergartner girl in the bathroom, right? Like, so if you allow them to share bathrooms, then that is the argument. So gender identity being equated with predators.
Why aren't they educating the 5th grade boy rather than?
Okay, so, I mean, that has deep history of like protecting innocent girls, has deep history going back to like, you know, protecting white women from from slavery, right? From free Black people. So that carries from that history. Access to sports, you've asked. Access to sports, I think the public often sensationalize like 1 or 2 stories. But if we're thinking about statistically the number of people who identify as trans or non-binary and intersex people, we do not see that. We do not see that population at the highest levels of competition in athletics at all, right? Like,
Yeah.
we don't see that same ratio. So there are statistically as many intersex people, so people who are born biologically ambiguous, either with both reproductive systems or, you know, they don't know. Like physically you can't tell. Those are the ones that may have, you know, so oftentimes I've heard many stories in the past where the doctors are like, I don't know, this looks more like this gender, so we'll just raise them as this and they'll be fine.
But usually, I mean, just to jump in here, usually post-conception, the parents express their opinions and
Right.
then
Right.
that
So in
determines
consult
for
agreement
sure,
with
you know,
the
what
parents.
happens and who
Right.
knows.
Right, so these are biologically ambiguous, they have both, you know, of course their chromosomes are
Father wanted to
not,
raise a boy.
right, so you raise them that way and then they're, so now so there are as many intersex people among us than there are redheads. But redheads, we accept them because you can see the difference, you can see the variation.
Also, some of us died
But you can't, you know, so the intersex piece is that's the I in the LGBTQIA, right? Like that's the I. And then there are trans people who, I don't remember which slide I put that on, maybe it's later on. But I know in part 1, I had discussed like the spectrum of gender and how gender is, well, this is all because there's been a lot of progress in medicine and research in biology, right? Like we're discovering a lot more variations, and gender is self-identifying, like how you identify yourself. And I know there has been a study, and I put it here somewhere, that the brain of a transgender person aligns more with the gender that they identify with, right? And not with their physical body parts. So I mean, if we want a scientific argument, right? And my kid is very neurodiverse. And you would see the ratio of people who are neurodivergent identifying as transgender or non-binary, because they don't often like categorize themselves. They don't you know, fit themselves into like socially, they don't conform as much as cisgender people do, right? Like so access to sports, if we're talking about, this was recent. The head of NCAA was interviewed at a hearing.
Yeah, he was interviewed. This is the head of the NCAA. I'm sorry.
Yes. Just want to
just because I thought this was really, and I was like, anyway, asked like how many trans athletes are there
in NCAA?
And his response was, out of the 500,000 college athletes in America, he was aware of fewer than 10.
Yeah, double digits.
So like we hear about this as like some great, I can use the word sensationalized, like this huge issue in sports. Maybe it is, but it's like, it's such a small fraction of the number, you know.
Small fraction, yes. So, yes. So we're going to talk about trans athletes, right? Like how many people are we actually affecting? 10 out of hundreds of thousands? So that's who we're targeting. Teachers and books that teach transgenderism, these are the arguments, right? Exposing them to gender ideologies, students are indoctrinating our children, and how God only made two genders. Male is XX, female is XY, that's it. Radio Lab has a wonderful series, and they produced this like a while ago, and it's not even recent. There's a 7-part series talking about just diving into exploring the diversity of biology, of, you know, I mean, if we're like concerned about sports, I mean, they should reflect the population then at Olympics. They don't. You know, at the highest levels, we do not see them competing at the highest levels.
Can I just say, you keep mentioning at the highest level.
Yeah.
If you don't affirm someone at the lowest level, how do you accept them to get to the highest level?
Yes.
So, you know, and I just also want to point out that it was mentioned that it's a group of older folks here for the most part. And the fact that everyone's here, you know, in my growing up, I had a lot that I questioned. You know, I never questioned my gender identity, which I'm selfishly grateful for. But knowing that there are all these people, you know, granted this is an enormous church and there's a small fraction of people here, you know, maybe less than the ratio of 10 to 500,000. But the point is, the fact that everyone's here and making this conscious effort to learn, educate, you know, it's a big deal. So I just wanted to just say thank you.
Thank you. I echo that, for sure. These are also links. Please learn about them. I share my slides with Audrey. Please get it from her. Parental rights. So all of this debate, they risk physical, emotional, spiritual safety of all our trans siblings.
So we have 2 daughters, and they are female, not just in XY terms, but also they identify as females. But at some point in their childhood, I began to think, well, what happens if they turn out to be gay? What would I think? And one side of me said, well, I welcome them. The other side of me said, well, what would I think? And how much of a problem would this be for me emotionally? And I don't know if you had that kind of experience. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think that's true for many of us.
Yes.
That we have this intellectual, welcoming attitude, but emotionally, it's a different deal.
Yes, emotionally, I totally agree. I know we're also running out of time. I totally thought about, you know, and I'm, you know, wondering about all this debate too, right? Like, how are we centering? Who are we centering? Like, the question is, who are we centering? Whose safety and concern and their livelihood are we centering? Are we centering? Of course, you know, for that first few months, I was very, very uncomfortable with the idea that my kid being trans. Like, what does that mean for me, for my husband who's clergy in a very conservative community? Like, what does that mean for my, you know, for how much discomfort is that going to cause me in my relationship with other people? Like, how many friendships or family relationships will I risk, right? But none of those questions is about the well-being of my child.
Bingo.
So what do I need to do to ensure that my kid is safe and able to pursue whatever she dreams of, or, you know, ensures that she has access and, you know, that she's protected.
You need to make sure that you have a supportive community.
Yeah.
For yourself.
Yeah. That's why I am part of the
Thank you
Affirming
for
Parents of
sharing.
Peace Flag as well. I have a
I
lot
didn't
of
mean
other
put you on the
parents.
spot, but thank
No,
you.
no. That is a great question. I mean, that parental rights, that is what they're harping on, right? Like I have rights to my children's access to whatever they're learning or whatever they're, you know, of course we as parents have rights, but what are we doing that's, you know, that we're actually centering our feelings and emotions over our child's well-being and safety? I don't know. So
Excuse
those
me,
are things
I mean, you said that your daughter now, she's fully transitioned.
what does that mean?
Well, she's identified as.
She's not. She's been who she's always been. I just knew about it, so I'm transitioning alongside, right? Like she's finally told me her truth, who she is at 14, and you know, that is who she is. So she is transitioning into the standards of what it means to be accepted in the world for her, but she's always been who she is.
As, I missed the point.
As a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Doesn't it seem to, it seems to me that to attach our attention to bathroom access in sports is a very simple thing. That's obvious, we see it, it's clear, it's easy to latch onto. But the reality is just what you've been talking about. It's not just the child, it's the parents, and what's your process, and are you embraced, and are you loved? And I don't know, the whole sports and bathroom thing kind of pales
Well,
in
that is,
comparison to all of this.
those are the current hot button issues,
Yeah.
arguments. Sorry if I'm going over. So this is again, microcosm of what's happening in many local school districts. Just so you're aware, policy 5756, that is a live link. It's a statewide policy. So currently there are 3 districts in Monmouth County that challenge the policy and sue the DOE to abolish it: Manalapan, Middletown, and Marlboro. And the ruling in February was to stay the policy, don't change anything, don't add to it, don't subtract, until a Supreme Court ruling later this year. But I think, guess what was missing? The loophole was it did not prohibit districts to abolish it. So that's what some of the districts are still doing. So on our township page, the debate became not about the legal ramifications, but on the humanity of trans and non-binary people. Again, equating them with pedophiles, and the conversation gets ugly. The debate is decentered on actually, you know, what does this legally mean for this district, if we abolish it or not, right? But it's centered on whether or not certain number of students deserve protection. So again, let's go back to the numbers thing. Since 2019, this is 6.5 years, we've served maybe 3 students. Like, I was guesstimating 5, and I was being very generous, right? So, and these are students, 3 families that knew what their rights were and were protected, you know, from access. This is completely unprovoked and preemptive challenge, because nobody sued the district about anything. No student was harmed, cisgender or not, you know, or no one was harmed by the policy. But all this argument, going back to, do trans and non-binary people deserve equal access and human rights? Do they deserve physical, emotional, spiritual safety and care? So, like, all this argument, I feel like it's the wrong argument, right? So do we acknowledge each other again as human? that my rights are just as deserving as yours, and how do we erase these categories when we're talking about rights for each other? Must we have a full understanding before we fully embrace them?
So, just a sidebar comment. The New Jersey Supreme Court ruling, I'm just half guessing it's going to come after the November gubernatorial election.
Yep.
And that the candidates running now have probably said nothing, almost nothing on this issue.
All of this is very political.
Right?
Yes,
All
yes.
right.
We
Thought so.
should not expect a ruling until early as December.
They just don't wanna talk about it.
No, no. So, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I do have some issues of sort of a philosophical nature with a lot of the rolling back of things, because there is no talk about trans men. Trans men just are like, they don't exist, which is not true because they do exist, but they're not politicized.
Right.
And I also, from early childhood on, had a real issue with being told what it means to be a woman. I am cis. But there were times when wearing pants was scandalous for a woman and not allowed, okay? Short hair was, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Or you have to wear a bra, etc., etc. I refuse to accept any of these rules. And it doesn't, that's why, why do we need to know exactly what they are defining as? It doesn't matter, you live your life, and I really hope everybody gets to wear the clothes they want to wear and have the hair they want to have, etc.
So again, must we have a full understanding before we decide to fully embrace one another and the other? And I'll be sorry.
Maybe I'm unusual. I don't know the mind of God. And when somebody else tells me that they know the mind of God, I seriously question that. And when they base their laws and their rules on their knowledge of the mind of God, I have a really big problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, God created us.
I
with
think
mind.
God is showing us the mind of God by every person we meet, with every difference, every malady, every similarity. For me, it's the universe. And God shows me the mind of God, and scientists help me see the mind of God. The Bible had a big problem with leprosy. But we don't have a problem with that now. We have drugs. I'm not suggesting that we need to treat everybody with drugs, by the way. I'm just saying, I don't know the mind of God, and God expresses God every day that I see the world.
Well, when our son came out to us, did a couple of things. We went to meetings, PFLAG, and before he went off to college, I said, I really think, because you started out, I think, saying that you thought you were bisexual.
Yeah.
And I think that was a gradual way of saying that I'm
gay.
And, well, what we did go to counseling, and one of the great takeaways that made me feel wonderful was a minister, and he said, God doesn't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And that did it for me. I said, okay.
As much variations there are in humanity itself, like there's variations in it. I think all of this reflect the imagination of God, right? Like it's just, it's beautiful. Like it's, who have we not met that we need to embrace? Who have we not met that we can learn from? Just so we can understand God a little more, right? Like so, and ourselves. So I close with this, with, even if we don't understand, we should always err on the side of love. That's not my quote, but we all make errors in our theology, you and me both. So my recommendation is to err on the side of love. Why? Because God is not a doctrine, God is not a denomination, God is not war, God is not law, God is not hate, God is not hell, God is love. And I'd rather, if I'm going to, be wrong for loving too much, then, that's, I'd rather have that. Being radically inclusive than exclusive, and being too merciful than too righteous. So, yeah.
I think it was in, everyone's not seen the show Ted Lasso, I highly recommend it, but I think it was in one of the episodes where they said you should be curious and not judgmental, which may not be attributed to believe that, it could be from something else, at least where I heard it. And my thought is, you may not understand everything fully. I don't understand the non-binary debate. I know a huge range of folks that I don't know the struggles they go through, but as long as you approach someone, anyone you meet, regardless of whether we're talking about a gender debate, whether it's someone of a different race, someone of a different religion, someone who is different than you, approach something being curious but not judgmental, and listen.
Yeah.
Everyone is different. You can't put everyone in a box. You can't react to everyone the same way. If you have children, you say you have two daughters. I'm sure they're different people. You can't do one for the other. If they grew up in the same house, with the same parents, under the same roof, probably went to the same, at least school through before college at least. It blew my mind when teachers would say, "You're nothing like your older brother." Gosh, and to me, that's the crux of the debate, is you can have someone raised in the same area, in the same place, and they turn out differently. So approach everyone with kindness, with compassion, and with curiosity is my takeaway that I would like to share with everyone, because I think that is important. And to love, as you said.
Can we give Laura a round of applause? A little bit of your story, and we're just so grateful for you doing this work, this hard work for our extended community, and in turn for us as well. Two things I encourage you all to do. Laura, as she mentioned, was here in October 2023, something like that. It was a really wonderful precursor to this presentation, and gets into some of the things of what is the LGBTQ community, what does it mean to be a queer person. And so I encourage you to watch that. Is on our YouTube channel, thanks to Amanda. So I encourage you to look at that. And also the Bible study, the conversation that we had on what it means to queer the Bible as well. If you didn't get to watch either of those, I encourage you to watch those as well. But let me close us in prayer before we leave. Let's pray. Beautiful, creative, gracious God, we're so grateful that you are here, that you cover us each in love. God, as we care for our community, may we love fully, even when we don't understand. God, may you continue to teach us, because we need to learn. May you show us how to love as you love us so much. God, may you be the love between us, and we give thanks for those like Laura, who are leaders who are leading us into love in the world just a little bit more. God, be with us, be with our queer community, and may you show us the way in all that you do. In your name we pray. Amen. Friends, this is also our last Donuts in Theology, and so I am personally a little sad that we're done with our program here, but what a wonderful way to end our program here. And this is the beginning of our conversation. We will continue learning together, and we have programming coming in the fall on this and other things as well. So I look forward to learning together more. So thank you.
Christian nationalism. Yeah, we gotta hit that. Yeah, you bet, you bet. Yeah, it ran. It's